Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And welcome to today's UX Subnetwork and today's webinar titled Introducing and Scaling Digital Services and Human-Centered Design Practices in the City of Seattle. I'm Beck Center Fellow Kirsten Wyatt, and it's my pleasure to moderate today's presentation. The Digital Service Network is a growing peer learning network that connects and supports digital service teams and professionals who use data, design, and technology to improve government services. The Digital Service Network is supported by the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University and the U.S. Digital Response. Today's presentation is for our UX subnetwork. The UX subnetwork is a closed group subnetwork of the Digital Service Network that connects current government employees who work in or are interested in user research and user experience. So while today's presentation is a UX subnetwork event, we're also very excited to have new faces in this space joining us to learn more. And most of all, we are very excited to welcome Michal Perlstein, who leads digital engagement and services for the City of Seattle. She will share more about how the City of Seattle introduced and scaled digital services and human-centered design practices across the city. She'll discuss the journey of establishing the team, challenges and solutions that she's discovered, how the team is working now to meet the needs of constituents, and how the team is looking forward. And you'll have plenty of time to ask questions. If you're not yet a member of the Digital Service Network, we hope you'll take a minute to sign up for our email list. We are here to be responsive to your needs and will develop more webinars, articles, research, toolkits, and more based on what you're looking for to advance your work in your government organizations. A few quick housekeeping notes. A recording and a recap from today's event will be available online after today's event. You will also have time to ask questions, and if you have questions during the presentation, please use the chat feature to ask them, and I'll moderate the questions as they come in toward the end. We'll also be active, as you can see in the chat, sharing links and information as needed. And as a reminder, when you're engaging with the Digital Service Network community, we expect you to adhere to our shared community norms. These community norms help us ensure that we are creating a shared space of trust and productivity. Please be kind and respectful in your communications, take space and make space, promote a collaborative and supportive environment, respect this as a safe and confidential space, stay curious, and assume goodwill. And with that, I will hand it over to Michal.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is Michal, and I've been in this role for the past 6.5 years from inception of the team. I've been doing this kind of work as a product manager for over 15 years, and my professional experience spans the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. And in all of those roles in the past, I've had to be a change agent that prepared me for this responsibility here. So digital engagement is a cross-functional team within the IT department in the City of Seattle. We have two main responsibilities. One is managing a suite of communications products like the public website, blogs, newsletters, and social media, and also the user experience program. And I'm going to separate our story into 4 phases. First is before the consolidation of the city's IT department, then the early years, 2017 to 2018, the middle years, 2019 to 2021, and the present, which I'm calling the present, 2022 forward. So first I'll describe the initial situation and its challenges. And then for each of the next 3 phases, I'm going to touch on values, mindset, and tactics. And for this, I'm defining those as values are our broad preferences about outcomes. Mindset is our attitude and disposition, and tactics are a series of actions and tasks that we took. Sometimes I break them up into external, meaning interaction with other city staff outside of our team, and internal, more for our operations. So there was, in the very beginning, a small Department of Information Technology that managed some central services at Seattle, in the City of Seattle. For example, a few people who are now on my team were part of something called the Citywide Web Team. They were talented, but not empowered to fulfill the city's potential or their own. IT staff and systems were embedded in each city department, And these people collaborated a bit by necessity, but I don't think they were really a defined cohort from a talent or organizational perspective. There was no alignment of systems, processes, and standards. There was a lack of enterprise tools. For example, no single enterprise content management system for the public website or similar platforms for the public. So we affectionately refer to this time as the Wild West. While this period may have seemed productive and successful to certain departments, you can imagine what kind of impact this had on the digital experience for the people we serve. It was really messy. People come not to look for something from a specific department, but to do whatever tasks are at hand for them that day. And it needs to be not a disjointed experience. The mayor at the time initiated a consolidation of IT staff and services with a new name, Seattle IT. This was a difficult initiative to implement, and it was painful for a lot of people. I was new, and so luckily I had no emotional attachment to the past, and I could analyze the situation and design new steps with an objective perspective. So during this time in the early years, I focused on change management. The manager of the former citywide web team, who now leads our development team, kept everything running while I learned about our products and our people. And I'm grateful for that partnership. This accounted for about my first 6 months. Actually, my first humbling moment that kind of speaks to the mindset is it occurred in just the first hour on the job. I met with my director to review the strategy and expectations for the team. And when he noted that the team will grow from 7 people to 22, which I knew, I thought I needed to begin working on a recruitment plan. But he told me that no, most of the people have already been identified through that IT consolidation process. I wondered out loud how we could achieve our goal to create new services at the city with people who may or may not have the qualifications to do so. And that's the job. So it was a pretty embarrassing oversight on my part. But really, what I did was I reframed that as I have this incredible benefit to lead dozens of team members who have deep knowledge and expertise about city departments and their customers. So that's valuable research that we continue to leverage now. So we're continuing to benefit from all of that knowledge. And some people have been here for 25 years at the city. So there's a lot of knowledge to go around. So what we did in the early years was started with creating job descriptions and team structures. Digital engagement is 3 cross-functional teams leveraging interdisciplinary skill sets. We have a user experience team, a development team, and production. Production is a mix of product management and product operations. I focused on transition plans for team members from previous roles. They were sometimes in different departments. They could have been doing tasks that had nothing to do with digital services and sometimes nothing to do with IT. And so that was difficult to tease that out and transition that back to the department. We worked on physical co-location. People were spread across different parts of the city and different buildings or different floors of the same building, and we wanted to sit together. This is pre-pandemic, so people aren't used to working completely remote. We defined our services in a standardized service catalog. Our IT service management team had templates for how we define and describe services across the entire department. And so we very quickly and excitedly filled that out to make sure we were defining our scope. We created a team mailbox, and that helped us create centralized support, team-wide visibility, and record keeping, which has become very important to track conversations, especially over 6 years. We laid the foundation for our user experience program. One of the first projects we did was creating citywide personas that still inform technology projects from the start. We reached out to or studied other government digital services groups. We shared ideas with neighbors in King County, city of Tacoma. We were introduced to the city of Boston's digital team and followed the work of many federal, state, and city teams. We also celebrate successes. So we paused to celebrate big milestones in our work, even if something wasn't complete. We moved into our own space in a renovated floor of the main Seattle Municipal Tower. So we could also choose how to decorate. Some team members were involved in choosing artwork from the city's collection. Others came up with a flag system to indicate availability for kind of walk-bys. We also had a first birthday party for ourselves in this photo with full decorations and cake. And it was a big deal because we needed to give ourselves credit for what we'd achieved so far. 1 year old for a team is pretty young. And we still have a lot to learn and improve, but we wanted to celebrate where we come from. So in the middle years, we became unapologetic advocates for the public. This was a new concept for many people and a large cultural shift. For the most part, our partners across city departments were engaged and excited to reconsider our approaches to sharing information online. But to support this shift, we needed to solidify our own processes and systems. So some things we did in that external frame was solving business needs in a way that works best for those we serve. So we serve everyone. We have a very different responsibility from other tech companies. And based on previous ways of doing things, we know it's a terrible idea to blindly implement a solution handed off by a stakeholder. Our job is to use analysis and critical thinking to identify the underlying challenge to determine the best path to a solution. We fulfilled an advisory role that included recognizing gaps in the organization, such as the lack of a central communications department at the city, also inconsistent expectations for client service on both the client side and the provider side in IT. We implement a product approach. We train our stakeholders out of a service desk or servant to the business mentality, which is the old expectation for client service that we were confronted with. And instead, we consider these people partners. We partner with communications staff and other program managers across the city and recognize the value that each of us brings to the table. We implemented demand management to prioritize work and distribute attention equally across city departments. As you can imagine, there are some small departments with very small budgets that represent some of the most vulnerable residents in our city. So we consider the impact on the citywide personas more than the size or the stature of the department. We have direct communication with our department partners. We send monthly release notes. We hold mini conferences or trainings where we share concepts they may be less familiar with, like design thinking methodology. We revise and shape digital policies. There are a lot of policies, and we work to make sure they were up to date with the current landscape. And through those policies, we also establish acceptable use for both regulatory and user experience reasons. We formalized product trainings and resources for our users. We established a curriculum among our products for training and provisioning accounts. We had a cadence of training sessions so we could plan in advance. We started an open lab, so we provide individual support and better manage everyone's time with a published schedule instead of trying to schedule ad hoc meetings. And we created and managed an intranet site that acts as a one-stop shop for any city employee working on digital communications. So it aggregates information about our own work as well as the work of other teams and programs that might be doing similar things. On the internal side, we solidified our UX program. That includes delivering presentations and case studies. We recreated the digital style guide. It was initially one web page, mostly focusing on colors and typography for the public website, to an ever-expanding resource outlining requirements for all public-facing digital properties. We started standardizing products, considering the global need and impact. So we studied a new navigation paradigm on the public website, focusing on how the public understands the services and not how we see ourselves. And we started restricting customization of templates and designs because it confuses our users and it's difficult to maintain things that aren't consistent. We codified and improved our cross-functional feature development process. We started thinking about which team is involved in each phase of our 3 teams. What decisions need to be made in each phase? How do we determine when to move from one phase to the next? And we started a monthly peer recognition award. Sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's silly, but it highlights a colleague's achievement or impact. And then we present these and proudly post them on a wall. So in the present, at this point, we have a solid foundation, and as a team, we're committed to innovation and continuous improvement. At the same time, we're faced with increasing demand for digital services with no additional funding and no additional headcount, which is not aligned to our roadmap and where we thought we'd be. So we need to be really efficient and strategic about how to invest our time and effort. I wanted to throw this in because it's an example in our present day about visual collaboration in a remote work environment. So the team was synthesizing usability testing data related to updating information architecture on one section of the public website. This represents how it's okay that you can't read anything on the screen and just see lots of shapes. It represents how stakeholders can get involved in human-centered design when observing or learning from usability testing. And it shows how we can collaborate and save and preserve our work better than taking a photo of sticky notes on a wall. So this has really worked well for us to learn to do a lot of our work in a virtual environment. So external tactics in the present. We manage the digital experience and standardize across all public-facing web applications, not just those that we manage as products. We build digital insight among city employees related to human-centered design, accessibility, and brand consistency. We developed a standard application header and footer that can be consumed centrally by multiple applications, and this helps with that standardization. We expanded the digital style guide. It seems we do this about every week, so it's an amazing document, or application, I should say. We continue to update digital policies. We host presentations or training sessions, and we contribute to articles on the city's intranet. We also focus on self-service resources instead of repeating information and guidance, where we could miss an important point, spend lots of time reinventing the wheel. Instead, we spend a lot of time on documentation. We want to create clear instructions and examples. So in the digital style guide, we have a lot of great examples describing something, but also showing do and don't. We have how-to documents all stored online for our internal administrative users of tools so they can understand how to do specific tasks. And in our training, we adapt the supporting materials as the products change or as we're learning more feedback about what needs attention. And then we turn to areas in need of ownership and attention without specifically defining new services, since we don't have capacity for that. We think of things like brand consistency. We manage the city's brand portal and educate people on brand guidelines and the location of official brand files. As you can imagine, it can be a little tricky where people have the best of intentions and start creating logos or don't understand that the brand is important based on the digital experience. We think about content strategy and editorial processes. We plan for the homepage on the public website. We have promotional highlights. We plan for the updates to those. We oversee all updates to information architecture throughout the website to make sure it's coherent. And we write the content for central web pages that aren't specific to department programs. So internal tactics. We have a very strong leadership team. And I mentioned we have 3 teams that make up digital engagement. So we have talented and passionate individuals leading each of our 3 teams. And the culture of collaboration, accountability, and respect among our leadership team, it cascades through to team members. We think about continuous improvement in our everyday work. We are always streamlining team operational structures. Things like our shared annual work plan. How do we create it and present it and share it with each other? We create virtual Kanban boards within each of the 3 teams. We have continuous integration, continuous deployment for development. We have weekly leadership planning. We also have cross-functional processes for each of the products that we manage. We continue to advocate for a product culture in the IT department. We do our best to model product management and human-centered design concepts for other teams. We encourage them to be more proactive, less reactive, and consider the big picture. We also gather awards and recognition. And in the past several years, this has been really motivating because we see the objective measures of success of our work. So we won a Project Experience Award in 2021 based on a template for winter weather that we created for emergency information. That was while we had plans, but hadn't actually implemented a lot of human-centered design concepts. So in the following year, when we'd implemented a new human-centered design for our global navigation, and we're still cascading through to all sections of the website, we won a digital government website of the year, a government experience award for the whole city's whole experience. And this year, the city won 5th place for the government experience award. So the digital experience for all things that people are interacting with the city for. And then on more of the internal front, just this morning, our team won an award within the IT department at an internal conference called the Seahawks Team Award. And it was an award for people for be positive and motivate, focus on solutions, and trust in yourself and the team. And that's again rewarding because it's how we act as individuals and how we treat each other. And so that's also really heartwarming to see that reflected as well. So what are the takeaways from this, from these three sections or three phases? Having a digital services team in-house versus outsourcing or having consultants is really important to build the capacity internally. It improves the user experience for the people we serve, as well as the user experience for the internal users of our products, like those content editors across the city. We can realize cost efficiencies. It's a better use of city funds to plan for enterprise tools and manage fewer vendors. We avoid or at least decrease technical debt. Instead of having distinct projects, we do strategic planning and have sustainable practices for maintenance. We apply empathy to our operations and not just services themselves. For this, I mean thinking about what lens a stakeholder might be using and what challenges are they facing. And that really helps when it's more than assuming positive intent. It's also trying to put yourself in their shoes and putting that empathy, not just into human-centered design for the public, but also thinking about where is someone coming from? So we can, even if the answer is no, we say, I hear what you're saying and I understand why, but here's a better solution. We anticipate questions or concerns with clear communication. So for example, we have a 2-page document in very plain language called the 6 Ways We Help You Avoid Website Risks, trying to explain all the stuff we do and why. We also acknowledge the non-technical aspects. We understand that business processes need to be in place in order to be successful, and technology is not a magic solution on its own. And when establishing a work plan, it's important to find a balance leveraging user research and analytics, department partner feedback, technology strategy, and required maintenance, and being realistic about all of those things. I've had to get familiar with the organizational politics, bureaucratic processes, and allies. And honestly, building allies these people can be at any level of the organization, and they become very trusted and valuable relationships. And lastly, I'd say remain confident and don't be afraid to ruffle some feathers. I need to accept that change is uncomfortable for people and that tension's inevitable. So we allow for those feelings, understanding change management, but it doesn't mean that we're going to change the direction we're going. It's important to remain passionate, accountable, and consistent in order to build trust within the organization. And often people come around later and they do realize that maybe their individual preferences would have been a short-lived win, but embedded with negative consequences. And the decisions we reached in a systematic way will ultimately benefit everyone in the long term. So that brings us up to date almost in 2024. And the last thing I want to share with you is just some resources. And really, it's just one easy link to remember, seattle.gov/digital. That explains how we approach all of our digital properties for the public. And then from there is a link to the style guide. And within the style guide is a link to personas. So instead of giving you lots of long, complicated links, that one should help. So I'd be happy to answer any questions and at this time. And I think I'll stop sharing my screen.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we've had some questions come in to the chat already, but just as a reminder for our guests, please use that chat feature. We will capture your question and then make sure it gets asked. But first off, we saw a lot of interest in the chat. Thank you, Shelby and Becca. They would love to see a copy of that 6 Ways You Help Avoid Website Risk document. And so we'll do some follow-up in our follow-up email and can share that out if Michal is okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
But first question that came in, can you share where did that mandate for IT consolidation come from? And then how have leadership changes over the years affected, if at all, that mandate and your ability to be a standalone team doing this work?
Yes, that's a very big question. And I'm sure the people if there are any people here from the city, they'll be smiling. So a former mayor, we've had many, many mayors. And when I first started, we had, I think, 3 or 4 mayors in about 6 months. So one that was outgoing for various reasons, and one that was outgoing is the one who had that mandate. But the whole changes have already been in place. When you think about how slow government moves, I mean, from funding and budgets, it already had been in motion. But I have to say, I still think it's a great idea, and all of the reasons I said, all these economies of scale and standardization and consistency. But it was, I don't know where it came from. I don't know if I know that the mayor at the time was working with the CTO at the time and different directors, like the director I reported to, and they did create a like a list of things that they wanted to work towards. But I'd say that we also had, because we had changes in mayors, we also had some changes in leadership in IT. Luckily, we've had a lot of the same leaders, even if it's not the CTO. So our interim CTO now, who's been in place for, I think, 2 years, was our director before then and the person who hired me. So we have consistency in leadership, and there are many other leaders in the executive team in Seattle IT who've been there for a while. So as staff members, we have consistency in terms of support and motivation to continue on a path. But we have had different leaders in terms of the full department head and CTO, and it does get tricky. But I have to say, like, I'm grateful for the support of those consistent leaders, like our current CTO Jim Loader, who has been supportive and understands this work as well as the important work of other IT teams, and really supports us all in meeting our goals. I hope that sort of answered the question. I know it's a little more complicated because there's a lot of politics that I'm probably not even involved with.
No, absolutely. And thank you for that. And I will say that that often is the number one question that we get asked at the Digital Service Network, is to help others understand how different governments structure their teams, where the mandate comes from, where the authority is. And so appreciate you sharing that. The next question started as a comment, but I'm going to turn it into a question. And Ollie writes, that brand part is interesting. It's something I hadn't thought about, considering ways in which a group of interested individuals with digital skills could support their local community. Can you just talk a little bit more about your kind of ownership or oversight of that brand package, and what that looks like, and if that's something, how that factors into your work, so we can better understand that?
Yeah, and I would say, and I mean brand in terms of like the visual and graphical elements, not necessarily the brand in terms of reputation. We do work closely with the mayor's office and with experts, and there are program managers who are very passionate about their work, who own different services, and we completely defer to them. But and the mayor's office is integral to deciding on how the city has presented itself to the public. So we work very closely with all people all over the city. But in terms of brand, I mean, we have our UX program lead is also has expertise in visual design. So because we have people in our staff who are so talented and have so many different previous careers and previous roles and skills, we are lucky to be able to grasp a lot of things. I think brand is important because you can imagine, especially in today's day and age, when we think about security, which is also a big topic in Seattle IT, just visually having something that isn't branded correctly, just the smallest thing in a brand, when we all get spam emails, you see the smallest difference in the brand makes you suspect that this is hacked or this is phishing. And so if you're a government and you're saying, luckily the things we manage are mostly just informational one-way communication, but because we manage the user experience and digital experience for all products, there's a lot of transactional things: paying your electricity bill, applying for a permit, getting a pet license. How do people feel comfortable? How do they feel secure and trust that this is real? I'm actually telling the city this. I'm not giving someone else my address. I'm not putting payment information into a hacker's site. So brand and design really come together and are super important elements to creating that trust and really supporting the city. And when you think about people who might be newer to the city or have less facility with the English language, now we're really talking about equity, right? How can we visually stimulate like that trust as well? So it happens on all different levels, and that's why we get so passionate and think it's so important.
That's great, and such an important reminder too on that trust side of things. Question here from Christian in Arizona. Has this digital transition allowed policymakers to better understand and use data in their policy decisions and to project or track results?
I think that there are other teams doing work that's specifically focusing on policy. So we are creating digital policies more about how you have to present web content, um, how we need to make sure that we're accessible. So I don't want to say that we create policies in terms of big policies, like how you interact with the community in terms of services. There are teams that think about those things. And I think those teams are the applications team taking data from most of those transactional applications like permits and things. And then there are teams that work on special projects that are really cultivating new ideas and then tracking those to inform policy. So we aren't specifically working for the mayor's office to try to change big policies or working with city council. So I think in that sense, that's a little bit outside of where we are, but we do try to inform them in terms of best practices.
How do you balance homegrown or customized solutions versus off-the-shelf tools? And the question asker notes that the summary seems like mostly off-the-shelf tools, and then would love to know about how that impacts your team structure and staffing across engineering, product, user experience, et cetera.
Well, actually, our team only uses off-the-shelf tools for newsletters and social media. So our blogs are on a WordPress on WP Engine. We use WordPress, but it's completely managed and completely customized by our development team and designed by our UX team. And our website is the same. We have a platform called Nginx. It's just a platform. It's completely developed in-house by a really talented development team. Again, in conjunction designed, all three teams work together to design and develop and build everything. Our development team actually just went through, it's a little tangent, but actually just went through and spent like 5 months refactoring the code to make sure it's fully accessible after we did an accessibility audit from a third-party vendor. So I think that there are some smaller government agencies that tend to do off the shelf because it can be easier for them. For us, the level of control was good, and also we're lucky that we have the skills in-house to be able to really do some incredible things, developing in a custom way. And then that informs other things. So our development team created the standard application header and footer to give to all the other application teams across the city to try to apply to theirs so that we have that consistency for the public. But we did the work for them so we could have a quality handoff when we expect them to do something.
I'm going to pause the questions in the spirit of recognizing good work and giving kudos, as it sounds like you do with your team. But a comment here saying, thank you for sharing the details of our sometimes tough but always worthwhile journey. It's great to be part of an organization and team that values the user and is not afraid to advocate for information that is both usable and accessible. So if everyone wants to give a round of applause, because I think sometimes we don't recognize our good work enough.
And that's from Nick, one of our developers who's been at the city for a very long time and knows a ton and was part of that, making that accessible, making the website more accessible through the development team.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Nick. Great question from our friends from Multnomah County. To what extent do leaders speak to the relationship between effective digital service delivery and rebuilding trust in government? Is that at all an interest or a concern or a topic for them, or is it maybe perhaps an unspoken issue?
I don't think I understand the conflict. Let me try to read it.
My guess is, do you think that maybe at the most senior level, either elected officials or top appointeds, are they making that connection between when we have effective digital service delivery, we're really building trust in government and in government service? And I would even say, to your points about being able to trust anything that has the Seattle brand on it. Do you think that understanding or trust is recognized, or is that still something that you're doing behind the scenes, but maybe hasn't risen to that policymaker level?
Yeah, I do think that it's very difficult. I think sometimes it tends to be the most senior people who are the most difficult to reach. And that's why I mentioned the allies. We have people we work with all over the city who understand this, who are advocating for the customers they work with directly, whether it's human services or parks or immigrants and refugees. And So we work with them to try to be louder. We do try, we think any channel, like now, any channel, any opportunity we can take to explain what we do and why it's important, we do. And but I do think when you talked about rebuilding trust, that's a really important term, because the truth is we try to explain you can't really rebuild it. We have to make sure we don't lose it, right? We have to make sure that once you lose people in anything, not just trust, right? Once you lose their attention, it's really hard to get it back. So how about we do the right thing the first time? How about we start correctly? We've proven it works. We have these awards. You know, we don't really have complaints from people saying all these things are terrible and don't work anymore as we make them better. So, you know, we do have a lot of metrics in terms of our UX team measuring things like improvements, whether it's time on task, or looking at our usability testing and where it went as we went through iterative prototypes, and how, you know, even our own hypotheses are wrong often and we have to improve them. So we're willing to do that, right? We're willing, just like the accessibility audit, our team is willing to be guinea pigs and willing to be vulnerable and find out where we're wrong and do better. So we want to apply that to everyone else. So at least we can point to ourselves and say, we did it too. But we are a very loud, very loud and passionate group. So it does help that, and like I said, people are from all departments. So we have connections to really try to persuade people across the city. But it is tough. And I'll just say, like right now, our city council tends to be the one that part of the website is the one that's most difficult to work with, because it's not following the standards, and we're afraid that it's breaking trust. We're afraid that it's not really fulfilling the needs of our residents, and so that's what we're trying to explain to people all the time.
A question here about times of transition. And so the question is, has part of the consistency for your department been more of a focus on transitional documents, so knowledge and goals transfer well-ish, as the question asker writes, between administrations and those changes? And then have you found consistency in IT department goals regardless of those external politics?
To be honest, we have a lot of autonomy because we are clearly focused on the public. Like we work in human-centered ways. I had a conversation yesterday about how with some people about how we needed to improve something because we neglected to think about everyone's different use cases and perspectives. And so we have a lot of autonomy in doing things and setting our goals. So we do sometimes communicate goals that are the ones people want to hear, and we do that work. For example, like we're transitioning blogs to a new theme from an older theme, and that's something people can measure and track. But there's also things we're doing, like really exciting things behind the scenes. Maybe it's innovative. Maybe it's something, especially with development, you can't see it for quite a while, or design until it's implemented. So we are given autonomy to do those things. So our consistency is really us deciding that whatever decisions we make, we have to be consistent across. And that's why we do a lot of research, a lot of studying. We don't implement anything very quickly. Well, hopefully it's not too slow, but we don't rush to do things. We study them and we iterate on them. And then we try in a small way, and then we expand it to the whole city. So in terms of transitional documents that I mentioned, that was really just in the very beginning, like a transition plan was basically how I can extract that person from that department and get them on my team. And there were people on my team who I was doing their job for. There was one person who's fantastic, but I was doing his job for a year. So it just could not get him out. And so a lot of this, that's why I was lucky to have Jeff, our development team, because I was busy, meeting people in other departments and trying to convince them that I didn't make this plan, but this person's on my team, our budget's paying for them, they need to do this work now. And so I had a lot of those change management and relationship discussions. So that was mostly where the transition stuff came in.
A question here from our friend Dana in Delaware. How did you bring along application development teams into UX thinking, or even just visual design?
That's a great question, and I think we're not there yet. To be perfectly honest, I think our IT department is probably the biggest challenge we have. While they're respectful of what we do, they think we're compartmentalized, like all these UX things we do are just for our products. They don't understand it's so difficult. I don't know how else to explain that we create the standards for the entire city for all applications, whether it's for a vendor application or custom, whether it's run by a department or run by IT. Not because we said so, because it's important for the public. It's the people we serve, right? It's not just because we want it that way. And so that is a real challenge. There are some teams that are really engaged and really excited and always exploring in their application portfolio how they can apply some of these concepts. And there are some that have people on their team who are also really excited and looking into this, whether they're trying to do usability testing or just trying to look into how they can maintain standards, but also make enhancements they need to make to their products. And then there are others that seem to, for some reason, never knew there was a style guide. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to improve. And if anyone has suggestions, we're all ears.
Well, and so we have another question that looks people are plus oneing it, and it looks popular. Do you have some examples of how you do that? Like, what have maybe been some tactics that you've used to get other teams to align with your digital standards? And again, it doesn't have to necessarily be like this is what you do every time, but maybe just a couple of tips and tricks that folks might take home with them.
Sure. I mean, so a couple of things, like one, working closely with the IT service management team. So when someone puts a request in the IT service hub, we've created it so that there's an automated workflow that goes to us. So they have to get approval from myself or one of the other team leads in order to request the domain name. Because we need to understand that we're involved in naming. We're thinking of languages. We're thinking of plain language. We're thinking of, is it contextual? Things like that. We were invited to present to a GIS user group later this month. That's one team that's really engaged and does really great work. As really like champions of accessibility. If we have an IT department meeting, I'll ask to be on the agenda. Our communications team creates newsletters for the whole city, but also for the IT department. And they're also great partners, and they're willing to amplify our messages and put them on the intranet or send them out to IT. So trying to think what else. And honestly, a lot of people on my team have been here so long and tend to be experts in so many different areas that they're pinged for other reasons to help with technology projects. And because everyone on my team is so awesome, they have like their antenna go up and they're like, I know you asked me this question, but I'm not sure that meets our privacy requirements. I saw your page. I don't like how that looks. And so it's kind of nice that we're able to just get ourselves in there different ways. But again, any suggestions? I'm always looking for new ways, just trying to take every opportunity to just repeat it because it's for the public, right? It's not an ego thing. It's just, we just want everything to look great and to be accessible and to be equitable.
Yeah, and if this work was easy, everyone would do it. And it's why we have created organizations like the Digital Service Network and the Sub Network to continue having these conversations and sharing information and learning from great organizations like the City of Seattle. A question here about limited English proficiency population notes that your site uses Google Translation for translating the site. Do you have insights about how satisfied the LEP population is with the quality of that translation?
Well, we do work closely with there's a language access program at the city, and the coordinator there is great. And we work with her. She actually coordinates getting professional translations, and something that people do is deciding if they have budget, and I guess if it rises to a certain level of importance in their department, they'll also get professional translation. And so what we can provide is Google Translate. We can't create 7 or 14 different versions, like maintain like 14 different websites in different languages. So that's in terms of capacity, that's what we can do. When we look at analytics, it seems that the translations aren't actually used as much as we think, or the languages. It's interesting to see which languages are used versus what we think is used. However, those people might be navigating the website through their community groups who are then explaining it to them, right? Or if someone's in human services, it could be a social worker who then is helping them navigate something. So we're thinking about that. I think that a couple of things that we try to do are making sure everyone writes in plain language. because whether it's because you're new to English or because you have a lower literacy level, even people with PhDs can read 8th grade English. Let's just do it there and make sure everyone can understand everything. Even technology terms, right? We don't need to explain things in ways we talk to each other. We can just explain it in a way everyone can understand. And then our team is we're working on something for those professional translations to make them easy. We have a component we're creating with different buttons so that our content editors, if they choose to have professional translations, they can have a way that's highlighted to choose which languages they are and have the user click the button to bring up that language. So it's not just like PDF documents all listed on the bottom of the page. So I think when it comes to actually measuring the improvement of specific content, I think that's mostly within the departments, because we actually have automated tools that help people measure content, the quality of their content, accessibility, things like that. But there are departments that have chosen to do documents and pages in other languages. And I think that's mostly because they're doing the research with their actual customers for those programs. And I think that's probably more useful, where we can contribute, but I don't really know if that's really our place because we're not the subject matter experts in the first place.
Question here, for the web apps that provide the digital services via the city website, how many are built by individual departments versus by your team? If it's mostly the former, how do you ensure consistent UX across apps?
Do you mean like mobile apps or just web applications? I assume it's web applications in
I
general.
think it's web applications.
Yeah. So now that we have a consolidated IT department, the IT department should be involved in everything. So when someone if there's something that's not standard software, meaning not like an enterprise thing that IT offers to the whole city, it's supposed to go through a process, meaning hopefully it does before people implement it. But it gets reviewed by our security team for digital risk and security. It gets reviewed by the privacy team. And we're trying to get in on being that third group, because sometimes it can pass those, but then we say it doesn't matter. It doesn't meet any web content presentation standards, or it's completely inaccessible. So I would say that things should be involved, and IT should be involved. We have had vendors who unfortunately also ignore the style guide, even when it's shared with them. So really, we try to get at it from the front end. We want everything to be done right the first time and not have anyone waste time or redo work. We also are willing to chase people after the fact and be like, so you haven't updated yet. What are you going to do? This is out of compliance. This violates accessibility rules. We're very clear. We want the best for the public. It's also maybe a financial and legal risk for the city. And we're reputational, right? If you're clearly excluding people and don't care, that's not a good look. So we're really trying to explain all the reasons why this is important. And yeah, we'll try before, we'll do after. We don't care.
And this next item is a comment, but I'll also use it as a reminder as I read it. We probably have time for one, maybe two more questions. So if you have a question, please drop it into the chat. But it's a comment about how sometimes the simple things can be huge wins. And this person writes, sometimes making simple things like making the web application developers not have to write or rewrite CSS by providing them global styles that can be easily implemented is a huge win. So another kudos, I guess, here for you. And while we wait to see if there's one last question coming in, any other simple things that have turned out to be huge wins that you might also reference?
You know, I would say that I think the two main things that have, at least in my personal viewpoint, so I don't know if the whole team would agree, but that set me up for success in this work is, one, having the support of the people I report to. So you know, those directors have always understood our work, support our work, and if things are escalated to them, which happens less often now, but very often, they turn around and say, "What did she say? What did that team say?" Because they don't need to be involved at that level, and they you know, they delegated to us to make those decisions or explain why. We never say no in one sentence. We put 3 paragraphs about why this is important and what we should do instead. And the other thing is really having a team that's just really engaged. I think that we've had some rocky times over the years, but I think in the last couple of years, I mean, we have a team that's super rock solid. I mean, people are, and everyone has their own talents they bring to the table, and separate from their actual role. Um, they that they still use in their role. People are really passionate, and so everyone really works really well together. I'm just really proud of everything we do because they make it work. Like they make it happen because they put in the effort. They find ways to be efficient and streamline. And this is not working 24 hours a day. We really just stick to like the 40-hour week, and try not to do overtime and try not to have fire drills. It happens sometimes, especially when the mayor's office wants something. But for the most part, we've gotten actually so good at anticipating things. Like we know when an election cycle is coming. So we know what we have to do when we backwards plan that. So we're really trying to set ourselves up for success. And I think the team, we've effectively tried to reduce the risk of burnout and just let people innovate. And I hope they all feel like they're able to grow and be challenged.
Well, we feel fortunate that you were able to join us after your team won the Seahawk Award. So I think this makes you the ultimate 12th man, I think, as the term is. So just want to thank you for joining us today. Thanks to everyone for attending our webinar. But most of all, Michal, thank you for sharing your time with us, sharing your expertise. Just want to remind everyone that if you're not already included on our Digital Service Network list, please remember to register. And if you're a current government employee interested in user research and experience, please consider joining the UX Subnetwork. We meet monthly. We have great guest speakers like this. Sometimes we just talk through the work that we're doing in our organizations as a place to find fellowship and shared learning together. Please remember that the spotlight, write-ups and artifacts from the work that digital service teams are doing across North America are available in the DSN resource library, and you can leverage and use these as needed in your organization. This includes our job description library, which is more than 250 job descriptions for digital service positions. And then if you haven't heard, the Digital Service Network, in collaboration with Code for America, will be hosting FormFest on Wednesday, November 8th. FormFest is perhaps the nerdiest but best online conference you will attend all year. It's all about online forms. We're even featuring a session about the city of Seattle and how they have created forms to help residents navigate up to 30 different services related to the high cost of living in the city. So you can learn more from the city of Seattle as well as governments around the world. And again, all about government forms. And so let's see what else. Just want to make sure again that you can sign up for the Digital Service Network, register for FormFest. I see in the chat that there was a concern about the website. Head over to formfest.org. We did sell out all of our tickets that we planned in the first 6 hours. We have expanded it now because evidently FormFest is the hottest ticket. More popular than the Taylor Swift tour, more popular than the Beyonce tour. No surprise there. So head over to formfest.org. And again, please sign up for the Digital Service Network so you can stay involved with more events like that. So we'll close today's webinar. Michal, thank you for your time. And we look forward to seeing y'all soon at a future Digital Service Network event.
Yeah, bye.